Sometimes, a question can be too good for its own answer. It's not uncommon for stories to spend a lot of time building up a mystery, only for everything to come crashing down once that mystery is revealed. Maybe the answer wasn't satisfying. Maybe the story doesn't know what to do with itself after answering its own question. Perhaps it's a question that would have been better left unanswered. Oh, speaking of questions, the reason I'm in a hospital is because while cooking, I substituted an ingredient with an advent calendar. Turns out, when you're a dog, I shouldn't do that. On the bright side though, I did get this Get Better Soon gift from some unknown sender who sucks at wrapping presents. And I think I know what might be in here. See, these hospital people have been keeping me locked up in this place for 2 months now, so this mysterious box must be some sort of tool for me to escape. Let's see here. Transformers on DVD. I can make this work.
Why, it's you again. Didn't I tell you to?
Look, it's autism crime.
Ah! Oh my god, I finally got rid of him!
Ah, feels good to be back. And with the help of Transformers on DVD of all things. Funny thing about that movie, I can never decide if I like it or not. Like, my opinion of it changes drastically each time I watch it, as if it's simultaneously brilliant and horrendous at the same time. Like Schrodinger's cat, but like, less animal cruelty. I think. So you know what? Since I just happen to actually own that movie on Blu-ray, I think I'll have another look at it. An analytical look. To judge if this movie really is good, or bad, or perhaps somehow both. Now I won't explain what Transformers as a brand is, because it's apparently more successful than James Bond, but I would like to mention that before this movie released in 2007, the franchise was at a bit of a low point. It was by no means failing, but it wasn't as successful or relevant as it had been before. And so while this movie didn't necessarily disregard older fans, it was very much made for people who knew nothing about Transformers. And the reason I mention this is because it becomes relevant in the very first scene. A deep voice tells us about the Cube, an object of unknown origin that is able to create worlds and fill them with life. However, after a war broke out over control of this cube, it was lost to the far reaches of space before ending up somewhere on Earth. Now what's interesting about this scene is actually what we aren't told. We're not told how the cube was lost, we're not really told who or what fought the war, in fact we're not even told who's narrating this. Anyway, we cut to the military base in Qatar as a chopper approaches it. Trouble is, that exact chopper was shot down 3 months earlier. A bit strange, but it's probably nothing. It gets escorted to the base, where it does this. I'm gonna talk about the visuals later, but I also wanna say, I love the slow build up towards the transformation. The robot monster thing blows everything up, hacks the US military, and then deploys the Scorpion before we cut to an unrelated school somewhere. This is Samuel James Witwicky. I'm just gonna call him Sam, because I'm horrendous at pronouncing words. He's doing a family genealogy report on his great-grandfather, who was an Arctic explorer before he went insane and started rambling about some Iceman he found. Sam, however, uses his report as a sales pitch to pawn off his great-grandfather's old stuff. See, he's trying to gather some cash for a car. In fact, immediately after class, he and his dad set off to buy that car. Sam initially picks out this 70s Camaro with some strange symbol on the steering wheel. His dad thinks it's too expensive though, so they look at some other cars instead. That is, until the Camaro emits some weird noise that destroys every piece of glass in the vicinity, magically making the Camaro drop in price. Later on, Sam has this lake party together with his friend Miles, in an effort to impress on girls with his new car. I like Miles. He doesn't do much, but this little tree climber is a good example of how this movie handles side characters. Even if a character only has a few seconds of screen time, they always do or say something that makes them stick out, and I like that. Makes the world of this movie feel far more alive than if everyone but the main cast was just a bunch of dialogue dispensers. Case in point, Miles is barely in this film, but the fact that he randomly starts climbing trees out of nowhere makes him memorable despite that. But on the topic of characters, this is Michaela. She likes cars. Sam offers to drive her home, but on the way the car briefly breaks down, and this old rust bucket is shown to have a suspiciously good engine. The next morning, Sam's car gets stolen. As he catches up to it, he discovers that his car is apparently alive. Like Brum. Oh, and Sam also trespassed on property, so the next day he gets interrogated by the police and... Wait, is that Gordon Ramsay?
Yeah, how crispy that is. Look at that. Oh my goodness me.
Cut back to Qatar, where the survivors of the attack in the beginning are looking for a way to phone home, only to get attacked by the Scorpion thing from earlier. During the battle, one of the soldiers borrows a cell phone to call for an airstrike, but the phone operator tells him he needs a credit card before his call can be put through. Fun fact, According to the director's commentary, this scene is actually based on a true story. Apparently, during the invasion of Grenada, there was a moment where some Navy SEALs needed to find a credit card to make a military phone call. Michael Bay, the film's director, heard this story and decided they wanted to put it in a movie. The commentary never specified if the real story had the robot Scorpion in it though. But moving on, they find a credit card, call the Pentagon, and the robot Scorpion gets airstruck to death. The next morning, Sam wakes up to his car returning by itself. Sam doesn't like it when cars steal themselves, stand up, and then try to act like nothing happened, so he unsuccessfully tries to flee from his own car. Fortunately, he finds a cop that can help him with his unfavorable predicament. Unfortunately, the cop does this. As he's being chased by a second car, Sam literally runs into Michaela. However, they are both saved by the Camaro. One car chase later and... actually screw it, yeah, see for yourself. I prefer this over 6. If you go frame by frame here, you can see this low poly object that they have slapped a metal texture on and used as a gap filler. And daring quirks aside, this fight scene is really good. I just love the use of framing and color here, though I'll talk more about those things in just a bit. We don't actually get to see the Camaro defeat the police car as that happens off screen. The scene instead focuses on Sam and Michaela fighting this smaller robot. But I don't really mind that. I mean, first of all, we'll be seeing plenty of robot on robot violence later on in the film. But more importantly, we don't really know what the deal is with this Camaro, since we've barely seen him do more than just be a car. And so it makes sense for this scene to focus on the human characters, as those are the ones we've actually had time to get invested in. We have reason to care if Sam gets hurt, not so much if the walking Camaro gets hurt. After the fight, the Camaro properly introduces itself, or tries to anyway. He speaks using his car radio, and so all he's able to say is that he's from space. He gives the humans a ride with the promise of more information and turns himself into a newer Camaro on the way. Incidentally, the very next scene is genuinely perfect and a masterpiece of cinematography and visual storytelling and whatever other fancy words can he use. In this scene, we witness the arrival of 4 more Transformers. What I like about this scene is, well, first of all, the music and camera work and all that is sublime. But my favorite part is actually the different perspectives we get on this event as it's happening. There's Sam and Michaela, who are familiar enough with these robots not to panic, but are still a little scared. There are these people who do panic, with this one guy running around with a camera and screaming for his vlog. And then there's my favorite bit, right here. The steam, the eerie glow from the pool, the way this robot climbs over the camera, the music. It's just something otherworldly yet magnificent, or almost divine. And then this girl thinks it's a tooth fairy, because she doesn't know about aliens or terrorism or whatever else an adult would assume this thing to be. There's a difference in scale on display here, not just regarding physical size, but also regarding perspective. And the cherry on top is the parents freaking out because the pool is ruined. The robots take on the forms of various Earth vehicles before finally meeting with Sam. They surround him and subsequently transform, unfolding like origami to reveal their true selves as the camera spins around to emphasize their scale and awe. Now, before we move on, I would like to take a quick moment to mention the mystery this movie has been building so far. It of course starts with the opening scene. Like I mentioned earlier, we aren't told anything about the people that the cube created or what their deal is. And after that, pretty much every story thread has tied on the mystery in some way. The attack in Qatar makes us ask questions. Sam wants a car and the car he buys acts weird, making us ask questions. Sam has a crush on Michaela, which leads to him giving her a ride. The car then breaks down and we see things that make us ask questions. Even seemingly minor details are in service of building the mystery. Why can a Camaro only talk through his radio? Because that way, there's a good reason for him to not reveal the mystery just yet. But this is it. The Transformers have arrived on Earth, they met up with Sam, and it's time to explain things. Why are the robots here? Why are some of them hacking the military? What do they want with Sam? What is the answer to the mystery?
eBay.
eBay? The movie has spent an entire hour building up a mystery and the answer was eBay? Okay, let's rewind a little bit here. This is Optimus Prime. After he, Bumblebee, and the other Transformers formally introduce themselves, he goes on to explain that they are here looking for the Allspark, that cube from the start of the film. He explains that long ago, there was a war on the planet Cybertron over control of the Allspark, between the Autobots led by him and the Decepticons led by Megatron. The war ruined their planet and the Allspark was lost to space. However, it was tracked to Earth by Megatron, who crash landed in the Arctic where he was eventually found by Sam's great-grandfather. And now it's up to the Autobots to find the Allspark before Megatron and gang can use it to wipe out humanity. Now this is all well and good, unless you ask this house Cleo seems very displeased about it. But how did the Autobots know about Sam's great-grandfather? Well, he touched Megatron's finger, which activated his navigation system, and imprinted the Allspark coordinates on his glasses. How did they know about the glasses? They found them on eBay! So you're telling me that in this movie, the survival of the entire human race hinges on the Autobots finding a random eBay page with some random glasses that just so happen to have alien coordinates written on them. What? How did you go from one of the best scenes in cinema history to one of the stupidest plot points I've ever heard? In just 3 minutes. If Sam had decided to list the glass on Craigslist instead of eBay, humanity would be doomed. This is so stupid, I need a pick-me-up. Let's talk about the movie's visuals. There's been a lot of different opinions thrown out on this movie over the years, but if there's one thing literally everyone can agree on, it's that the CGI looks fantastic. Hell, in some shots, if you pause, the robots just look like actual real statues. There are 1 or 2 shots where the lighting is a teeny tiny bit off, kinda, but it's so minor that CGI might as well be considered perfect. But plenty of people have already discussed that in great detail, so let's instead talk about the cinematography. In case you don't know about esoteric film terms, cinematography is basically just how you use camera angles and lighting to achieve whatever the movie is going for. And the use of camera angles and lighting here is pretty good. For the most part anyway. There's a very heavy emphasis on a blue and orange color scheme. Almost a little too heavy, the actors just straight up turn orange in some shots. But I appreciate this movie going for a colorful look regardless of execution. If it's a choice between too much color or too little color, I personally prefer too much. There's also a very heavy use of smoke and fog in this movie. Like seriously, it's rare to see a shot that doesn't have at least some puff of smoke somewhere in the background. Now this smoke is actually here because, well, for one, it just looks cool. But more importantly, it makes the CGI look better. See, if every shot has smoke in it, then every CGI robot is gonna have to be placed inside that smoke. And so these fake robots are effectively sandwiched between several layers of reality, making them look far more convincing. The reason it's in plenty of shots that don't have robots in them is probably to make the technique less obvious. Moving on to the actual camera work, I really like how there's this constant human perspective to it. Like even when the Transformers are on screen, they're always shot from the ground. Some people complain that fight scenes can be messy, the camera is often shaking and the bots frequently go off screen. But like, isn't the messiness the whole point? Again, the movie tries to portray everything from a human perspective. If you were an actual human with a camera trying to film this stuff in real life, then yeah, it would look like a mess. The way the movie is filmed makes everything look and feel real because it's treated as if it was real. A steadier camera would have made the fights easier to follow, sure, but then they would have instead run the risk of being dull and boring. But I'm running out of things to say about the visuals, so let's see if the story gets better. And it kinda doesn't, if I'm being honest. Everyone heads to Sam's house in search for glasses, the Autobots need to find the Allspark. Now this isn't a bad scene, in fact I quite like the interactions between the Autobots.
Get away. What's the matter with you? Can't you be quiet? You're supposed to be quiet.
I wish there was more screen time for the Autobots here, but instead the scene mostly focuses on the human characters. But that's not really a deal breaker. The real issue with this scene is just how unfocused it feels. Until recently, the entire movie has been centered on building a mystery. But now that mystery has been solved, it's as if the movie doesn't really know what to do with itself. And that feeling persists for a good while after this scene. I mean, some interesting things happen. Bumblebee gets captured by a secret government group called Sector 7, the Autobots get separated from Sam and Michaela but manage to nab the glasses, all the human characters go to Hoover Dam, Monk's brother is here.
I'm 85 to 90% sure he killed
Megatron.
But many of the scenes in this part of the movie feel like they exist mostly as to remind us that the characters exist. Things do start to pick up once we reach Hoover Dam though. First of all, we learn what Sector 7 actually is. Simply put, they're Area 51 if it was a dam. They've been keeping various alien artifacts hidden since the 1930s, namely a frozen Megatron, or NBE-1 as they call him, and the Allspark. Also, they're keeping Bumblebee hostage. Speaking of the Allspark, Optimus and gang are discussing what to do with it. Plan A is to use it to rebuild Cybertron, but if they can't keep it out of enemy hands, Optimus will push the cube into his own chest. The energy will destroy them both, sacrificing Optimus and the cube to stop Megatron. Keep this in mind, it will be important later. The smaller robot from earlier, who has been inside Michaela's purse all this time, notifies all the Decepticons about the location of the Allspark. Then Starscream over here blows up the dam's power grid, causing Megatron to thaw out. In response to this, Bumblebee gets freed and reduces the Allspark to a curable size, then they can hide in a nearby city. Which sounds pretty stupid, like, Won't they just endanger a bunch of civilians? I mean, I get that they want the final battle to take place in a city, so there's an actual sense of scale and stuff. But wouldn't it have been better if maybe the Decepticons nabbed the Allspark and they tried to hide in the city? So then the bad guys are the ones intentionally endangering civilians? But I digress. Something I like about this final stretch of the film is the increasing sense of chaos as the Decepticons close in on the Allspark. And this chaos culminates in the battle between Optimus Prime and Megatron. It's a losing battle though, and so Optimus is left with no choice but to sacrifice himself and the Allspark. But Sam pushes the cube into Megatron and kills him instead. This is not a plot hole. I've seen several people call it one, but it absolutely isn't if you're actually paying attention. Again, there was an entire scene dedicated to explain that cube plus chest equals dead robot. You could argue that if bringing the cube to Megatron was enough to kill him, then why bother trying to keep it away from Megatron? But it's pretty clear that this wasn't seen as a viable option. The plan was to sacrifice Optimus to destroy the cube. The fact that Sam was even in a position to kill Megatron is really just dumb luck. Had the Autobots tried to walk up to Megatron and push the cube into the chest, he would just snatch it from them. I know this sounds like a straw man argument, but I have met one actual person in real life who believes this to be a plot hole. So here's my message to that one person. You wrong, me right. And if you disagree, I'll make you try spaghetti bolognese with advent calendar chocolate. Empty threats aside, with Megatron and 2 other Decepticons dead, the day is saved. Then some other stuff happens before we ultimately roll credits. So now that I rewatch it, would I consider Transformers to be a good movie? Well, the answer is complicated. Let's talk about acts. Most movies follow a 3-act structure. The first act is setup, where we learn about the characters and the conflict. The second act is how that conflict plays out, and then the third act is how that conflict gets resolved. Beginning, middle, and end, to put it simply. The reason I bring this up is because this movie's quality sort of changes per act. The first act, i.e. the part where we unravel a mystery, is great. The story is focused and engaging, the characterization is good, the dialogue is witty, and every moment feels purposeful. But then the second act is honestly borderline bad. Like, it drags on, it's unfocused, and a lot of it just feels like filler. The third act is a little better, as the movie regains its focus, but it still doesn't get quite as good as the first act. It honestly feels like they planned the first act really well, and then the rest of the movie was somewhat of an afterthought, as evident by the fact that the first act is actually the longest of all 3. Incidentally, the theming of this movie is kinda weird. Like, the movie keeps repeating the phrase "no sacrifice, no victory", but aside from having to sacrifice the Allspark, it never really becomes relevant. If anything, the theme of this movie is that there's more to some things than meets the eye. Which is appropriate, cause, you know. Michaela seems like a shallow high school girl, but is actually a good mechanic and really brave. All Transformers are for more than the vehicles they appear as. The old junk Sam tries to sell turns out to be crucial to Earth's survival. But even so, the movie isn't super focused on either of its themes. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but a bigger emphasis on theming might have helped make the third and especially second act feel more purposeful and focused, I guess. But yeah, that's 2007 Transformers, more or less. I could have gone over the characters, but plenty of people have already done 1,000 analyses of that, so let's instead answer my original question. Is this movie good? It's alright. I really enjoy it, in part because this makes my brain release 3 gallons of dopamine per second. But if I had to judge it objectively, I'd say that it's a really fun watch, but not a must watch. If you're looking for a fun and unique action flick, then yeah, I definitely recommend this movie, but don't expect to be blown away. But that's been my look at Transformers, or Transformers 2007 as some people call it. It's like my franchise.